Okay, our next essential question is how do I multiply with decimals? Now, we're going to skip around a little bit. I want us to go right to workbook page 90, and we're going to focus on the rule for multiplying decimals. We're not going to get into, dividing it into parts and then multiplying. The rule works for no matter how big or small the decimal is, so I say this is the best way to go. We can state a rule about multiplying with decimal numbers, and here is the rule. Ignore the decimal points and multiply. That's it. Ignore the decimal points, multiply like you normally would. Then place the decimal point so the number of decimal places in the product is equal to the total number of decimal places in the factors. So let's take a look at the example over here. All right. Here we have 4/10 times 2/100. Now, if we ignore the decimal point, basically it's 4 times 2, which is very easy. 4 times 2 is 8. And now you are going to use decimal places in the two factors to determine where the decimal point is going to go in your product. So here in our very first factor, we have 4/10. 4/10 has 1 decimal place. That means 1 digit to the right of the decimal point. 2/100 has 2 decimal places. That means that there are 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. So in both of our factors, we have a total of 3 decimal places. 1 here, 2 there. That's a total of 3. That means my answer needs to have 3 decimal places. So the answer isn't just 8. 1, 2, 3. The answer must be 8 thousandths. Notice that I started on the right side of the 8, and then I did a couple like scoops over to the left 3 times so that I could have 3 decimal places, and you can see that I do. I have a 0 in the tenths, a 0 in the hundredths, and then the 8 in the thousandths. So 3 decimal places. So let's do a couple more together. Let's use the rule here. A is already complete. You have 2/10 times 3/10, which gives you 6/100. 2 times 3 is 6, but notice that we have 1 decimal place here, we have 1 decimal place there. That's a total of 2 decimal places in our factors. So my answer, 1, 2 scoops to the left, is going to be 6/100. Alright, letter B, we have 2 decimal places in the first factor, 1 decimal place in the second factor. That's a total of 3 decimal places. So obviously 2 times 3 is still 6, right? If we ignore the decimal points, it's basically 2 times 3, but now I'm going to use my decimal places to figure out where the decimal point is going to go. 1, 2, 3 times over, and I end up with 0.006 or 6 thousandths. And then you can write 3 decimal places. Okay. The next one, 2/10 times 3. Well, 2 times 3 again, there's your 6. I think you're going to notice that for C, D, E, and F. If you ignore the decimal points, you're basically doing 2 times 3 in all of them. But now where to put the decimal point? It looks like we only have 1 decimal place in our very first factor, and that's it. So I need 1 decimal place in our product, and that's going to give me 6/10. So 1 decimal place. Alright, I'm going to do one more with you. 2 times 3 again is 6, but let's see, I've got 2 decimal places there. I've got 0 decimal places there, so it's a total of 2 decimal places total for our factors. So 1, 2 times, and now I've got 6/100, so I have 2 decimal places. Okay. Continuing with page 90, let's do a couple more problems. This isn't in the table, this is towards the bottom. Looking at number 5. Well, right away, you know, if I ignore the decimal points, I basically have 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Now I'm going to count the decimal places. There's 2 decimal places in 4 hundredths and 0 decimal places in 2. So I need 2 decimal places total for my product. So I'm going to get 0 and 8 hundredths. Now for 4 hundredths times 6, again, I'm going to ignore the decimal points. That's basically 4 times 6, which is 24. And I've got 2 decimal places there, none there. So it's a total of 2 decimal places total. I'm going to end up with 24 hundredths, 0.24. Okay, so here are the takeaways. First, a decimal place. That's the position of each digit to the right of the decimal point. And to multiply decimals, here are the steps. First, ignore the decimal point. You want to multiply just like you normally would. Then you have to count up the number of decimal places in each of the factors and add them up. And then starting on the right side of the product, count left the same number of decimal places and place your decimal point there. So that's what we have here. 2.8 or 2 8/10 times 7. Ignore the decimal point. Just do 28 times 7. That would give you 196. Now you count your decimal places. There's 1 decimal place in 2 8/10, and that's it. So 1 decimal place in our answer. Start at the right side of the product and count left, and that's where you get the 19 6/10.